back to episode 7 of Voice of the Broken. Today we have a 7-page email sent in that's going to cover domestic violence and animal cruelty. Not sure how much of the animal cruelty I'm going to read because I struggle with that shit. But just know that this email will contain those things. We have now got 6 episodes out. Episode 6 was fairly short, managed to get 2 emails in on that one. We are looking for emails still. If you have a story that you would like told, it needs to be a long one, 7, 8, 10, 15 pages. It needs to be highly detailed so that we can break down what's going on and have a conversation about what's actually being accomplished or what you're struggling with. We need context. We need ages. We need, as many details as you can give us. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has supported what I'm doing. This podcast started off as a way to be able to give men insight into other men and let them know that they're not alone. But in doing this podcast, I'm realizing that what I'm actually doing is not only giving men that insight, I'm giving women a new perspective as to what their men are going through. We are going to be hopefully continuing this past 10 episodes, but right now that's still undetermined as we have not gotten to 10 episodes. I've also been recording these almost every day so that they're done and I don't have to go back and record them later throughout the as time goes on, which allows me to, work for 4 or 5 days straight, get it all ready to go, and then I don't think about it again until we're at the 10-week mark, and then I get to decide whether or not I want to keep going. So please subscribe to the channel, share it with people if you think it might help them or be a benefit in any way, shape, or form, and please leave comments. We are trying to get this channel to grow the way that To Be Better did, but right now it seems to be a slow going thing. I understand that this is also going to be a much deeper conversation. These are not feel good emails. Some of this is a lot to process. And because it's a lot to process and it doesn't feel good, some people just don't want to hear the shit. So I guess there's just a new balance in trying to figure out how to make this channel and this podcast a success the way that Peaches and I made To Be Better to be a success. So with that being said, I'm going to just jump into episode number 7. And I guess get into this. This says, apologies for any punctuation issues. My emotions might overwhelm me while writing this. Fair. My grammar sucks. So I struggle reading the shit. Here we go. December 26th of 2021 marked the start of a downfall of what I thought would be a magical life with my wife. We both decided to go to the hospital because we hadn't been feeling well, and since this was during COVID, we were worried. Sadly, our worries were confirmed after an 8-hour wait in an emergency room. We both had COVID. And while I was well enough to go home, my wife's oxygen saturation was low enough for the doctors to admit her. Again, we were worried, but we hoped for the best, thinking that we would see each other in a few days. I get that. Especially when people get sick, you always try to be optimistic. This also falls into the it'll happen to somebody else, never me kind of situation. Not sure exactly what all this is going to entail, but 3 days later, on December 29th, without warning, my wife was medically induced into a coma. Since she was delirious at the time, her mother convinced her to give all medical decision-making rights to the mom. The only notice I received while I was asleep was a voice message over Facebook where my wife, sounding delirious, mumbled, and the only words I understood were "talk to my mom." My relationship with her mother isn't good, but that's for various reasons. Marked the start of the downfall of what I thought would be a magical life with my wife. So you were married. Okay. So she took away your decision-making abilities, your medical decision-making abilities, and took it from you to the mom. That's, on the To Be Better podcast, we always say that when you get married, you are leaving your family and starting a new one. Your family, mom, brothers, sisters, dad, whatever, becomes an extended family. And when you get married and you guys are living together and you're doing the play and house thing, the marriage, that is your family now. Like that supersedes all other family. It's the two of you versus the world kind of thing. And we both believe that. Peaches and I both believe that. So this is already a huge fucking problem for me. A day or two passed, and I was informed by my mother that my wife's mother had signed a DNR on my wife. I was livid. I won't pretend I was nice to that woman. I wasn't. I called her every name in the book and told her if my wife died, I would make her cease to exist. I'm not justifying my action towards a grieving mother. I am expressing that I was grieving. I was a grieving husband at the time as well, extremely hurt and angry. How is it that your mom found out that your mother-in-law signed a DNR? Why didn't you, how come you weren't in communication with her mother at that point to make that a thing? I understand you had COVID and you were sick, but like, if my wife was sick and somebody else had some sort of medical say, I would be in constant contact trying to inform decision making and be aware of what's happening the entire time. I don't think that I would have let that go. But I definitely can see where you'd be frustrated and angry. I mean, that's a big fucking deal. Another day or two passed, and now we're on January 2022. My mother called me at 2 a.m. and told me I needed to get to the hospital. They called my wife's mother and said she wasn't likely going to make it through the night. In the movies, when the protagonist gets super life-changing news and everything slowly goes silent, yeah, that actually happens in real life too, and that broke me. That's an adrenaline dump. For people who do not live in extremely stressful situations on a regular basis, adrenaline will slow things down. It will speed things up. It will make things go silent. It will give you tinnitus, the ringing in your ears. It can make your vision blurry, tunnel vision, the whole thing. Like that's an adrenaline dump. That's your body responding with everything it can respond to in the moment, creating a huge adrenaline dump. That's a horrible thing to experience if you've never experienced it before, especially in a situation like this. It's even worse when you're in conflict and like there's the risk of physical harm because sometimes your muscles stop working. Whole different conversation. So moving on. My mom came and picked me up because I was in no condition to drive. Adrenaline dump. And severely upset. I can see why she would think that you're not in a condition to drive. She took me to the hospital to say my goodbyes. When I got there, I was escorted to her room and met with a doctor who actually told me that she was recovering. They didn't know why, but she went into cardiac arrest, and they were able to bring her back. She seemed like she was actually getting stronger. When I say I was over the moon, I cannot exaggerate how happy those words made me feel. My partner and best friend were alive and seemed like she was going to make it. Oh my God, the fucking silver lining, the sliver of hope, the little bit of light in the darkness. I couldn't fucking imagine. I couldn't imagine. Nothing of note really happened over the next 20 or so days. Damn, she was in there. I routinely broke down and cried, visiting my wife with the help of family, mainly my father, who throughout my childhood was in the military and a cop after he retired. He wasn't always emotional available because he was raised that way. But he helped me financially, emotionally, and physically on multiple occasions throughout this entire process, and I cannot express the love and support I felt from him. I'm curious what you mean by that. He wasn't always emotionally available. What did you need him to cry with you? Like, what does that mean? He wasn't always emotionally available. Did you need to be hugged more? Like, I'm very curious of what that is. I had parents who would fall into that. Not emotionally available. My father, my stepfather, was not much of a hugger. You know, you get a handshake from him every once in a while. That's just the type of person he was. But he was the type of man who would be there for you in your time of need, regardless of whether he could be emotionally attached to the situation, because he was that guy. Have a lot of respect for my stepdad, even though there was a whole lot of nonsense that happened in my life because of the man that I view him now as a man, like man to man. It changes things. I'm curious after all of this if your view of your dad changed. After about 25 days in a medically induced coma, they felt like she was healthy enough to wake up. I was ecstatic. But what they don't tell you is that they slowly wake up over the course of a few days. So with COVID restrictions as they were, and me only being able to visit her for an hour at a time, twice daily, it was a few days before I was finally able to look my wife in the eye and know that she was alert and aware. Oh man. Told myself I wasn't going to cry today. I'm not going to cry today. However, we couldn't speak because they had given her a tracheotomy while she was in a coma. She was awake and recovering, and I had I had hoped life would soon get back to normal. During this time, I didn't work because I wanted to be ready in case they called me to say she was waking up or the worst happened. When she finally woke up, I started going back to work and would visit daily. I can't imagine having your life be completely in limbo for more than a month, right? Like that's a long fucking time to be waiting on that phone call to know that like things are either going to be okay or they're not. I also know how impatient of a person I am, and I would be on the phone constantly. Any new updates, any new updates, any new updates. People would get to the point where they would stop answering the phone for me because I'd be calling every couple hours to check to see what's going on. I don't like having things out of my control, and I think that a lot of men will agree with this. We are fixers by nature, and when we cannot take control of a situation and make everything okay, it makes us feel helpless. And that level of helpless adds insult to injury when we are already emotionally defeated, because now we feel like we are useless as tits on a turtle. Like there is absolutely nothing that we can do other than exist. And it's a lot. So this went on for almost 2 months. So he then wrote, she finally came home around February 15th, 2022, but the conditions for her coming home were strict. She had to be on oxygen 24/7, couldn't do much housework-wise because of atrophied muscles, and couldn't speak due to the tracheotomy. Oh, I didn't think about the atrophied muscles. So when you don't, this is in 40-year-old version, he's like, is it true if you don't use it, you lose it? When it comes to muscles, that's absolutely the case, especially when you are only getting enough sustenance to survive and you're not moving, your muscles go away quick. The body likes to be lazy. And what I mean by that is if you don't have to utilize your muscle and you don't have to get up and walk around and you don't have to do anything, the body starts to use the proteins for different things and the muscles start to deteriorate and you have to then rebuild those muscles. And that shit takes time. It happens so much faster than the rebuilding process. And in that happening, it creates a lot of long-term issues. So you do need to remain active if you can. Obviously, this is not one of those cases, but just to throw that out there. I would also like to point out that at this point, we don't know whether or not the medical surrogate has been transferred back to him or if the mom still has the ability to make medical decisions. The person that came back from the hospital was entirely different personality-wise. I believe that. Mentally wise, and how she acted towards me and whatever I did wasn't enough. The money I made from working 40 hours a week wasn't enough. The money I was getting from my family wasn't enough. We never asked her family, always mine, for help, and throughout this time, she berated me through text messages because she couldn't speak, or she argued with me through sign language and miming. Oh, man. So I know that that's a lot. And I am going to devil's advocate and say that during that time frame, did you ever stop to think about what it was that she was going through? Because she can't effectively communicate with you. That alone brings a new level of frustration. Now, there's medical bills that are involved, and the caretaking aspect of things is she's trying to get better. Like her life has completely flipped upside down, and you are her support pillar in all of this. You're supposed to be the one that is there for her. This is something that a lot of people will fail on because they view the world through their own perspective. And when you shift your perspective and try to understand what your person is going through, it changes the conversation quite a bit. And this is something that she could have done as well as something that you could have done. I think that as a relationship is 50-50, as they like to say, it's never actually 50-50, but as you're supposed to be working as a team, having the ability to stop and process what somebody's going through their lens versus your own, it gives you a little bit more understanding, and it can actually change the way the narrative of the conversation goes. I would also like to point out that it takes a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of fucking strength to be able to have those conversations, because a lot of us don't want to fight. There are people out there who really just avoid conflict at all costs, but there are people out there who want to fight everyone except for their partner, right? So like there, at some degree, we don't want to hurt the people we love. We'll leave it at that. I can't imagine having going through 2 months of thinking the person that you love the most in the world is going to die, only to get them back and them not be the same person that they were before they got sick. Communication was difficult, and if me and her had to communicate at all, my entire world had to stop, and I had to pay 100% attention to her face, hand movements, and everything around us. It took about 4 months for my wife to finally be able to go out and walk for extended periods of time. During this time, I had been doing 100% of everything: cooking, cleaning, working, taking care of the animals, everything. What did she do during that time frame? I understand that she got sick and she had a medically induced coma, but you just said for, 6 months? 4 months? She got out in February. We're going to jump into July. So we're looking like 4 or 5 months of time where this is a thing, right? So what was she doing during that time frame? She could have been cleaning. If she's not doing anything but sitting around, she could be taking care of the animals. She could be cleaning. She could be kind of helping to cook. She could get up and do a little bit, sit down when she gets tired, get up and do a little bit more, sit down when she gets tired. Like, there is, from a man's perspective, if that was us that was in that hospital, we wouldn't have been given 6 months. Under no circumstances would anybody give us that kind of time frame. We would be berated and told that we need to get back to work and we have to provide and do these things. So maybe that's my survivor lens, or my cognitive bias in the way that I've lived my life and the way that I view things, but I would be trying to get back to work as quickly as possible. I'm not trying to lay around and milk that. I don't want to be a dependent. And I'm curious if at any time there was a conversation with her about like, hey, I know that it's hard for you to get up and walk around and like you can't talk, but like you could do the dishes throughout the day. Even if it took you 2 hours and doing it 10 minutes at a time, like you could still do something. And even though it would be hard for you, that's one less thing that I have to do on top of everything that I'm doing, and it would really help me out. You guys could have a conversation about that shit. In July, to make some extra money, I went to help my father run a fireworks stand that runs every year. When I came back home, the house was completely destroyed. It was a mess. Dead animals were in cages, and I was disgusted. Oh my God. Okay. Oh my God. I got angry, realizing my wife no longer saw me as a husband, but a servant. She expected me to pause my entire world every time she needed something and didn't want to do it for herself. Having a hard time with that. I'm curious if there's ever been studies done about what happens to the brain while people are in comas. I know that there's been people who have been in a coma who've woke up and spoke other languages or had a whole nother life. I don't know enough about any of that shit, but I'm wondering if something happened to her while she was in that coma that changed her personality. I continued trying to fix things until August of 2022. So that's the 6-month mark. At this point, I checked out of the relationship emotionally and I cheated on my wife. And I cheated for multiple reasons and gave myself multiple excuses, but I was still a bad person for doing it, at least in my mind, regardless of my reasons and the relationship. It continued until September 1st, when my girlfriend was getting evicted from her home. I felt I loved her more than my wife. Okay, so you were married. That confused me. I felt I loved her more than my wife, so I told my wife everything and told her I wanted to move my girlfriend in so she would have a place to stay. My wife seemed understanding at the time, but there came stipulations. She wanted to still live in the house, just sleep in separate rooms, be amicable to each other, and so on, which I felt was perfectly fine. Then the vindictiveness started, where she would use our single car to go out with her friends and be gone all day, knowing I had to do shopping for the house or had places to go, bills to pay, because some bills I had to pay at the place where they were. Wait, say that again? Because some bills I had to pay at the place where they were. Oh, so you had to physically go. You couldn't mail it in. It was so bad, even my girlfriend felt the need to say something to her. My wife then dropped the bomb that she wanted to also move her ex-boyfriend in with us because since me and her were no longer going to be together, she would still need someone to help. And he was willing to take care of her, so me just wanting things to move on and be amicable, I agreed. Bro, you are fucking building a messy ass life. I'm reading a book right now called Healing from Infidelity. And I'm reading this book because I just read another book that led to this book. Let me pull that one up so I can tell you the name of it, because this is relevant to people who are listening. Called Not Just Friends by Dr. Shirley Glass. Both of these are on infidelity, and the Not Just Friends book talks a lot about why cheating happens and how you can heal from it, how you can prevent it, that kind of thing. And Healing from Infidelity, I thought, was going to be a book about people who were cheated on that fixed their marriages and went back to normal. And so far, that's not at all what it is. So far, it's more about the process of moving on after a divorce. At least that's where I'm at in like the third chapter of the book. So I could be wrong on that. But knowing that I have a different understanding of what divorce looks like, even though I've been divorced, having a different understanding from a like psychological standpoint, this is never a good idea, ever. So if you guys are in a situation like this where you want to be with another woman and you're married, or you think that you're going to be amicable, that's not a thing. That's a very, very rare case. And though this falls back into this, it'll it won't happen to me kind of situation. It's better to separate and let feelings kind of settle a little bit before even trying to be friends with an ex. We moved him in and everything was basically fine. I was staying in a different room. My girlfriend was about to move in. Everything was good, at least in my opinion, because I was wearing rose-colored glasses. On September 15th and 16th, my wife used the car both days for the entire day. Both days knowing I had to do stuff on my days off before I went back to work on the 17th. So I was already angry when she walked through the door. She had been out all day with her friends and her ex-boyfriend hanging out and drinking. I won't mince words, I was pissed, but not as pissed as I was when I told her me and my girlfriend had borrowed her Xbox controller to play a game together. She flipped out, saying that we shouldn't have done that it was her stuff, and we should have waited till she got home and asked her. This is fucking drama. I told her if that's how she sees it, then fine. I'll just use my money in our bank account and go buy another controller. I walk into the room where I stay, grab my keys and my phone, and I literally go off with a notification that our bank account information and passwords have all been changed via the app. I no longer had access to the bank account where my checks for work were being deposited. She refused to give me the passwords and told me it was her money, even though I was the only one working. I snapped. I won't lie, I laid hands on my wife. I told her boyfriend he needed to get out of the house before I beat him to death. The entire altercation, I don't know what happened because I fully blacked out. And when I came to, I was driving from the bank at around 11:30 at night. I have a very deep-seated hatred for men who put their hands on their women. I have a very hard time with that because I watched my mom get her ass beat my entire life. I have a really, really, really fucking hard time with violence towards women. You should have left the house, bro. You shouldn't have said shit. You were already angry. You had your fucking keys in your hand. The alert went off on your phone. You should have drove your ass to the bank and been like, hey, I needed fucking access to my bank account. I lost my password. Can you fucking reset my shit? Or just got in your car and called them and had it all reset and then just fucking changed it. That there are much better ways to handle that shit, and allowing yourself to be emotionally manipulated and getting into that state doesn't serve anyone. This is why I preach getting into a logic mindset instead of an emotional one so much on the To Be Better podcast. This is also why, because of my borderline personality disorder, I have had to learn things to transfer from emotional to logic brain thinking. And that's going to change for everyone. What worked for me in the beginning was having a person that was dedicated that I could call, that I knew would answer the fucking phone in the event that I was going through an episode, and be like, this is what's happening. Here's my reaction. And this is what I think I'm about to do. And they were able to talk me off the ledge 99% of the time. This is one of those things where I hate to say you did it to yourself, but you did. There were a lot of decisions here that were your choices that could have been made differently to get you to not be here. There are things that she could have done differently as well. So I'm not saying that like I guess I'm not saying blame is the thing here, but the choices that could have been made here could have been made better. You obviously know that though, because you said you weren't proud of it. When I pulled into my driveway, the cops were there. Wife had called after I left, and they showed up, of course, and arrested me because I didn't lie. I only spent about a day in jail before being released on ROR, released on my own recognizance, meaning I did not have to post bail because it was my first offense and I was not a high risk. You are not in Florida. She was having me arrested, signed a temporary restraining order against me, so I wasn't able to go to my house. I had to move in with my mother, who thankfully lived in the same town as me. When I tried to go to work the next day after explaining to them, they would not let me clock in and told me I had to wait for the general manager and the kitchen manager to talk. Apparently, my wife had called them while I was still in jail and fed them a bunch of lies about me stealing food at night, which was not true. The only time I ever got food from the restaurant was when I asked for my employee meal, but that didn't fix anything. My reputation with them was tarnished, so I ended up quitting that job because they shortened my hours to unsurvivable levels. And shortly after that, the girl I had left my wife for broke up with me, saying she couldn't be with someone who was a cheater, and her family had advised her that I would end up beating her since I hit my wife on top of that. Fuck, dude. She knew that you were married. She made the choice to be with you while you were married. You were going to move her in because she lost her place. Then you lost your job and she fucking dipped out. This sounds to me like you were being used. I'm also curious if the general manager and the kitchen manager were men or women, because I'm willing to bet if you were to tell a man a story about like what was going on, that they probably wouldn't have fired you over it. They probably would have been understanding, because most men know women who have done shit like this. My court date came and went, and I couldn't afford a lawyer, and my ex could. How the fuck could she afford a lawyer? She wasn't working. I simply pled guilty because, let's face it, I ended up only getting probation for a year and a fine, but still I felt fully broken. And that moment, my credibility at my job was gone. My life was over. My animals and pets I had raised since birth were gone, because my wife got rid of them while I was out of the house. It got to a point where I was done with it all. I wanted to end it and just stop every bit of hurt I was feeling. And I was going to. Okay, before we move on, this is, again, every fucking episode I have talked about the need for community in men. We need to be able to have structure to guide younger men to do better. In this situation, if this young man was going through what he was going through, and he had a group of men who have been through a whole lot of shit, was able to sit down and talk to him and give him advice on what he needs to do, these situations probably would have been a very different situation. I had literally loaded a .308 rifle and put the barrel into my mouth, and I was getting ready to pull the trigger but stopped. When one of my animals, who I actually managed to keep, Nemesis, a cat I've owned for 7 years at this point, wanted food. Literally, this 10-pound ball of fluff, being hungry, stopped me from pulling the trigger because I wanted her to eat and thrive. So while I was getting her food, she was doing what cats tend to do, dancing around my feet, purring and making all the noises, which is something she normally doesn't do, so it stopped me. I picked her up, petted her for about 2 minutes, and then put her down, and then put the rifle and decided then I'd make myself better. Put the rifle away and decided, okay. I would do the court-ordered classes. I would become the person that I wanted to be and live for me and my animals. So I started a job hunt and was honest with every potential employer and ended up landing a job after several failed interviews at Jersey Mike's. I fucking love Jersey Mike's. Their Italian sub on the Asiago cheese bread, giant. It's my go-to sandwich order. Fucking love Jersey Mike's. Where I found understanding and support from people who have had similar experiences and understood that I was trying to be better throughout this time. So I'm telling you, that community fucking matters. I also don't know if you're a felon or if this was a misdemeanor charge. I don't know what that looks like, but if you're a felon now because of this, that record will follow you everywhere you go for the rest of your life. I am doing classes and living with my mother and trying to figure out the divorce with my wife. We are not communicating as she has a restraining order against me specifically at that point. So I gave a legal proxy. I gave legal proxy power of attorney and explained that I wanted nothing from her, that I wanted to be done. And she came back with she didn't want the trailer that she had bought while we were married and that she would sign over all equity to it to me if I just simply paid for the divorce and I was done with her. Okay. I agreed and took control of my house after she 100% left and was verified third party not to be there anymore. The house I walked into had dead animals in cages and just a mess. It's twice now that that's happened. It was depressing, but slowly I fixed it up and I'm living in it now. There are still problems, but they are manageable. And slowly over time, I plan to fix them. I'm still not divorced, but I have an amazing girlfriend now who I've been with for over a year who knows every detail about this and has been supportive while I was taking my classes. And when I have moments of depression, she has been there for me and supported me emotionally and mentally more than I have ever experienced before. I know I'm not being as detailed about my past as I am with this, but I think that's how it is. We tend to remember traumatic experiences more vividly than fond memories, but they still bring us joy. We may not recall exact details, but we recognize the feelings of joy that they bring. That's what this person is for me. I still have my cat Nemesis. She was sitting on my lap while I wrote half of this. Now she's gone to get water, I think. But I'm still not at 100%. I'm taking it a day at a time. I'm not the person I was, but I don't think I'm the person that I want to be just yet. However, I'll get there. To misquote Matthew McConaughey, my hero is me in 10 years, and then once those 10 years pass, my hero is still me 10 years from them. The goalpost will constantly move to better myself in my life. That's the end of this email. I'm glad that you're still here. It sounds like you have a whole lot of work that you need to do on yourself. And you guys need to take accountability. And you're taking accountability. You're fucking being forthcoming with your employers. You're being forthcoming with your new woman. You're taking your classes. You're doing all the things that you need to do. And by me saying you need to take accountability, I mean that like in the moment. The situation where you put your hands on your ex is you losing emotional control because you didn't think things through clearly enough to realize that you could simply make a phone call or go to the bank to get your password changed. You allowed her vindictive action towards you to become the narrator of what you're doing. And we can't do that. As men, we have to be better than that. I truly believe that we need to be a pillar, a stoic pillar. And I don't believe that we need to argue with people, right? Like that whole situation where she's being crazy emotional and being vindictive and malicious and trying to do things to you, you can make a choice to simply not respond. You don't have to have an argument with people. Somebody can say some really foul shit or try to entrap you in an argument or try to block you from leaving. As a man, you have the ability to simply get out of that situation. Walk through them, fucking move them out of the way. Don't say a word, just fucking leave. And then process for 5 or 10 minutes. Think about what you need to do and to do those things. And if you don't, I'm willing to bet if in that moment you would have gotten your car and called your mom and be like, she just changed all my passwords, your mom would have been like, call the bank. Tell them you can't access your bank account and have them redo your passwords, reset your password. There's a whole lot of things that you could have done in that moment that would have given you a very different outcome. So men, if you were living in a situation where you are being manipulated or you're being used or you're being abused or whatever the case may be, you need to find a clear plan of action. You need to do it from a logic standpoint, not an emotional one. This isn't about getting even. This isn't about winning. This is about trying to find the best possible outcome and then fucking going after it and making those things happen. It's hard to live in that environment. You went from having a loving relationship to becoming a caretaker and your animals dying and becoming a servant and fucking, but you also did a whole lot of things. Like I in one of those books that I'm reading, it says that men will physically cheat and will destroy their marriage because of it, and women will destroy their marriage and then cheat because we put different emphasis on sex. So the emotional aspect for women is a lot different from the physical aspect for men. And it sounds to me like you wanted a release and you wanted some sort of happiness, and you found a woman who was able to provide that for you, and you fucking did what you did. Ended up getting hurt even further because of it, because your girlfriend broke up with you because she didn't want to be with a cheater, even though she fucking knew you were married and was willing to live with you. But then you continued to make things worse by trying to placate everyone and just satisfy the situation. Sometimes the right answer is to protect your peace at all fucking costs and go, I'm not happy anymore. I'm not your servant. This marriage makes me fucking miserable. You make me miserable. I know that hurts your feelings, and I'm sorry that you're hurt right now, but I've been hurting. And I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go get a hotel and start looking for my own place. And that's the answer to that situation. You don't need to do the back and forth with people. We are taught from childhood. We are cut that. We are taught from childhood that we have to give explanations. You see it when parents go, "Why did you do that? I need to understand why you did that," so that they can have a conversation with you or punish you or whatever it is that they're doing. Or maybe it's just that they're trying to make you understand why you did that. They do that. And then you are taught that you have to respond and you have to explain yourself. And then it becomes an argument between you and your parents because you don't feel like you're wrong and they feel like you're wrong. And therefore now you guys are butting heads and there's like a whole lot of anger and animosity and nonsense. And that learned behavior transfers to you into adulthood. If your parents are calm about it and be like, "Can you tell me why you did that?" And you do, and you're having a conversation, it's a very different tone. When you are teaching somebody to respond to aggression by defending themselves, that creates adults who have to fucking defend themselves in everything. This is one of my biggest demons. I personally feel the need to defend myself almost all the time when I feel like I'm being attacked. It's a survival mechanism. But as I've gotten older, I've learned that an attack is a physical thing. You can attack my character. You can call me names. That shit doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt me. I'm not physically being attacked. I'm not unsafe. But a physical attack where my life is in danger is a very different response than the one that I would give to somebody who's calling me names. I could call you names back and we can talk shit to each other or whatever. But when it comes down to it, why am I going to disrupt my happiness and my peace because you have a problem? That's a you problem, not a me problem. And if I'm happy and somebody doesn't like that I'm happy, or they don't like me or like what I'm doing, fuck off. You don't have to be around me. You don't have to be here. You have the option to go live your life the best way that you want to go live your life. Go do that. Yes, it might hurt the other person. And in turn, that's probably going to hurt you because nobody wants to see people that they care about hurt. But at what point do you go, I matter? I matter more than this situation. My happiness should be a priority to me because nobody else is going to make my fucking happiness a priority to them. That period. You are not going to ever be put above somebody else's needs and wants at 100%. They may try to skirt around a conversation or beat around the bush instead of saying some harsh words because they don't want to fight with you or they don't want to hurt your feelings. But at some point, you've got to realize that they're going to do what they want to do to make them happy, regardless of your existence. Because at the end of the day, when you die, you're going to be going through that death alone. And when your life flashes before your eyes, do you want to sit and think about all the horrible things that's happened to you in life? Or do you want to take the reins and fucking start building a world that when you're on your deathbed and you look back on it, makes you smile and you fucking go into the next life with a smile on your face? It's a hard reality. It's a hard thing to understand. And the hard thing to understand is that you have control over all of this. The choices that you make are going to dictate the outcome that you get in life. So that's my fucking rant. I have yet to get an episode back up over 45, 50 minutes. I'd like to start trying to get these to an hour, but we need longer emails for that. So I'm going to try to pick another email real quick and see if I have a short one that we can do and then just kind of run with it. This one is called Success Story. Suicidal ideation is the warning. This is 5 pages. Probably take me 10 minutes to read it, so we're going to jump into it, and then we'll wrap this up. There have been 2 times when the darkness nearly swallowed me whole. The first time, I would randomly start crying in my office. Not a gentle eye water, but full-on uncontrollable crying. Depression and misery felt like they clung to my heart, as if an imp of darkness resided inside my chest. It began slowly with subtle mood changes, disinterest in the world around me, and the pressure of work seemed to exacerbate it. After about 5 months of this, I found myself with my lips wrapped around the shotgun barrel, sweating, finally able to do that, my wife at the time and my kids. Need more context there. That's not written properly. You guys should proofread these before you send them because I don't understand. Finally able to do that even though I have a wife and kids? Maybe? I don't know. I want to talk about the first part of this though, that I would randomly start crying in my office. I've had 2 nervous breakdowns in my life. One of them was when I was like 18 or 19 years old and one when I was 25. One of them was bad. One of them was kind of bad. And it's one of those things that the fucking cork comes off the bottle and you can't put it back in. And everything that you've been suppressing and the things that you failed to work through just doesn't do it anymore. And like you really feel like this is it, right? I think that a lot of people go through that and a lot of us have gone through that. But because we're not able to talk about it to other people or we're afraid that people are going to view us differently, we suppress it and we don't talk about it. But if the people that are in your life truly loved you, they would want to hear about that, because wouldn't you rather have somebody tell you what they're going through and allow you to just kind of sit there with them silently while they process and go through things or give advice or whatever it is that they need you to do versus getting a phone call finding out that they took their life, right? Because if you love someone, you don't want them to go through that. You want them to be here for a long time. You can call that selfish if you want to. I don't want the people that I love to go away. I have people in my life that I deeply, deeply love, and I am concerned about their safety daily. And not just like I hope they make it to work okay in a car, but like some of them are dealing with health issues that I pray for every day. Like I just wish that they would get their fucking life in order to not be where they are. I would rather be there and help them do those things and put myself in a position where like I don't want to be just to make sure they're here for the next 30 years because I enjoy having them here. And you can call that selfish. Fuck it. I'll be selfish to make sure that the people that I love are here, happy, thriving. Like you want that for the people you care about. So if you tell somebody something and they view you differently because of it, they need to move the fuck on. That's not the type of people you want around you. My wife called my now deceased best friend. He flew me out to Michigan to see him. I spent a week there finding release. Okay, so you had a community. That's good. He pulled me away from my misery, gave me a much needed respite, talking to me like we used to. There was no judgment. He listened and helped me work through some of the issues. He gave me a task that required my specialization. One task in particular stands out. His house was an older, dense wood structure with multiple floors and a 2-car garage. His wireless signal was weak in the garage and basement, and I ended up resolving his issue. Choosing some hardware I had used in my business, I set up and configured a remote unit in the garage, ran and configured the PoE for it. Looking back just now, I realized that while useful, I think he gave me the task that had no pressure except to give myself for a friend. I was very distracted from my problems, the world, any issues, and responsibilities. That's it. This is why I tell people all the time, don't isolate. When you start getting depressed, find a hobby and go do something to take up your time, because isolation is the enemy, especially when you're fucking depressed. It makes things so much fucking worse. And having a task, learning new things, giving something for your brain to fixate on, removes the ability for you to dwell on your bullshit. Coming back, I had a plan. I sought help from a doctor, and they provided medical assistance to bring me back to an emotional steadiness, antidepressant, vitamin D was very low, and a very strong anti-anxiety medication. It took a few attempts to find something that worked, but we managed to get me sorted. At that point, were you doing any therapy? Because if you're taking the medicine and you're not doing the mental work, the medicine's a fucking Band-Aid that's going to come unstick. It's not going to help. It is a temporary fix for a fucking long-term problem. So if you guys are going to doctors and you're getting put on shit, you need to start therapy as soon as the meds start working to fucking take care of what's going on. If you've got a gashing wound, you need stitches, not a Band-Aid. Meds can be the Band-Aid or a rag to get you to the hospital so you don't bleed out, and stitches are going to be what fixes the fucking problem. To understand more at this time, I was married, had 2 biological children with my wife, and had raised her 2 boys as the sole father figure. Their fathers wanted nothing to do with them. Also, there was no financial support that I ever saw in the accounts. I paid for everything in the household, and living in Washington State at the time, it was everything. It took everything year after year of struggle, which looking back built up tension and added to this pressure. One of the books that I read recently, it might have been 8 Dates, stated that financial struggles are the number one cause for divorce by like 75%. And then beyond that comes like 4 or 5 other things, but it's not even close in terms of numbers from financial to other things. When your money gets fucked up, your relationship gets fucked up. Because it creates a whole lot of stress, and like it's a lot easier to take care of one person than it is to take care of a multitude. Which is why I push for financial freedom so hard on the podcast. I paid for everything in the household. Okay, I read that already. I was not a good father. I was not a very good man. In earnest, I still struggle to see and realize others' emotions or why they get emotional about many issues, which is a constant point of contention. My wife had her own issues and demons, which added to the fire, but it's unimportant to the topic at hand. Only to note, both of us had our perfections and annihilations with the relationships. Probably should have said imperfections, but whatever. What I mean by that is when we were good at our things, we were perfect. Okay, so you meant what you meant. When we clashed, it was toxic, poisonous into the soul. Okay, so you guys didn't know how to communicate, and you allowed yourselves to be toxic and vindictive and poisonous to the soul. That's a choice. This is why I also say that when you guys get divorced or break up, you need to take time to really reflect on the things that you did wrong in the marriage or relationship and work on correcting those things. Because even if your wife was 100% the problem, the way that you choose to respond to things and the way that you choose to do things is a you fucking problem. So if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And if you're always a fucking dick and you're always vindictive and you're always defensive and you're always those things, every conflict is going to end the exact same way. And you will continue that pattern of life your entire existence because you never did the fucking work to realize like, hey, there is a better way to do this. I'm gonna fucking do the better thing. The second time, and I think the most critical visit into the darkness, changed me in ways that are hard to fully put into words. I let my wife, as we had been separated for some time, back into my life. I had learned so much and healed from childhood crap from being in our relationship, the toxic parts of who we were as a couple. I had become I had become a better man in the 4 years since our separation. I had become a better father and found and accepted myself. It's huge. A voyage of evolution that friends I had made in this time would remark on often. I love that. There's no better feeling when people are like, hey man, it's so good to see you smile again. A smile looks great on you. You're such a different person now. Like leaving that job was amazing for you. I can tell that you're happier. Leaving that relationship is amazing for you. I can tell that you're happier. Like that outsized source of validation that you did the right thing by leaving that job or leaving that relationship is fucking huge. Seeking my view, I'm going to start that sentence back over because I stopped at a comma. A voyage of evolution that friends I had made in this time would remark on often, seeking my view on issues, but I was still ill prepared for my wife leaving again. No word and just ghosting me after coming back into my life, spending days with me in heightened emotional states. Sounds to me like she wasn't where you were and she saw it. There's quite a bit more, and a crazy set of torrid sexual exploits I actually let go, was open and unprotected at my soul level. I was open to love and had come to understand my emotions. I was in touch, which unlike my youth, and for the first 14 years of our marriage, I was not. This leaving, like she did the first time, crushed me. It was a revisit of humiliation and torture to the likes of which I had no business undergoing. I was fortunate enough to be working in a section of my office where no one else worked. I was alone and allowed to lose myself to uncontrollable emotional insanity. You were isolated. Day after day, I was in the darkness. It was palpable. A void, dark of all feelings, except a torrential downpour of sorrow. It was like I was in a raft of absolute darkness. I could not see, I could not feel the boundary of the raft, which was my life. I was adrift, no wind, no rough water. It was smooth to the touch and would not create ripples or noise. I was in darkness that was heavy and overwhelming, no heat, no cold, no feeling except for the ache of misery. You were isolated, which just fucking makes things worse. Alone in my silence, My best friend was dead for a year now. I could not reach out to him. I had a newer friend who was local, but he was undergoing his own issues, and it simply was not the same to reach out to him because that bond wasn't there yet. He had sought to help many times before. I was his rock. I felt he could not help me here. I was alone. I would work, cry, go home, hold it in, cook for my boys, help with my boys' homework. I now had full custody of both of them. Their mother, my wife at the time, separated, had made some big mistakes, excuse me. I did my routine work, cook, clean, help my boys, maybe play some games in silence, sleep, and do it over again. Over and over again. You were isolated, bro. 3 weeks in, I had decided that was it. I could take no more. After dinner, I was in my room, Makarov loaded, cleaned and cocked, tasting metal, clenching the sidearm in my shaky hands. Too much detail. I asked for it. I did this to myself. We want the details. Fuck. I silently wept, sweating, trying to find a reason not to pull the trigger. I needed a way out of the pain. I don't know how long I sat there. In moments like this, time is different. It really fucking is. In moments like this, time is different. I can tell you I made a deal I felt was the only responsible way out. As I sat there on the edge of my bed, drenched, I had decided I could not pull the trigger and subject my boys to the grisly sight of their father's gray matter and bones strewn all over the ceiling and walls. But I needed rules. This is part of my life lesson from my separation from my wife. I needed a time limit to the end. My youngest son would be 18 in 5 years. I would delay the end by 5 years and answer 3 questions. August 16, 2026, the calendar entry I have contains the following. Are you happy? Do you feel love when you sleep? And do you have hope? If you say yes to any of these or all of these, then this task is done. If you say no to all of these, settle all accounts, write the letters that matter, and assign property, it's time to end the pain. You have lived in pain long enough. Fuck, dude. I've experienced this. All of it but the date. I actually thought I was going to take my life on my 40th birthday. Because I wanted the same day on my tombstone, birth date and end date. They would have been nice, even numbers. Like, so fucking crazy the way the brain works. This was only the first stage, however. I was still in the darkness and seeking another solution. Mind you, I was not reaching out or talking to anyone. I got that. Clearly fucking got that. I was searching within myself. I needed to resolve the issue. I thought and pondered, wondered and questioned. Ultimately, I decided that I needed to find a way out to stop the torrential downpour of sadness without losing all the ground I had gained with my emotional awareness. If I had bottled everything away again, I would lose myself. I had come to the idea that I needed to not stop the sorrow. I needed to create a way to slow the flow. You got to work on your shit. To take most of it away, but how could I? How could I do this? I took some bad advice that I gave myself from the example of a relationship I had been in. See, I had been in a relationship with a younger woman who had been diagnosed with DID. So I thought, hey, these personalities that are named change states and all kinds of things within an individual. So what if I created a persona who could help me with my raft? With quite a bit of visualizing, I began to imagine someone who could understand everything to collect the pain in a giant carafe. Don't know what that is. You're obviously way more articulate than I am. Pour it into containers for a slow empty. He would take these large clay containers. It's a clay container. A carafe is a large clay container. And pour them out slowly at a rate I could digest. I named this persona and would talk with him. You are creating a mental illness in yourself. This is actually how people create. Wow. I needed him to be real, so I made him real. It took about a day of visualizing, and by that evening, I was not as bad. The next day, as I worked, I talked with my counterpart in the void. He would not answer, just look at me and smile. I visualized, I made the process real, and it was working. Okay, so you weren't creating an alter ego. You were creating an imaginary friend that you could talk to. It's crazy that this is working because of the strength of our brain. This falls into like a psychosomatic healing or sickness. Now, about 5 weeks after D-Day, I was walking into one of my offices on a project, still sad but not unbearable. And it hit me. The bullshit statement the wealthy and insane gurus say when moments seem like they are shit, they really don't have to be. It washed over me almost like a chill. And I laughed right there. I cut up. If anyone is able to hear me, I'm sure I sounded like a madman. The idea of when times suck, they are so horrible, it's not really bad. Sure, it sucks. And right in this moment, I feel horrible, but that's okay. Take that moment in, sit in it, evaluate it, and feel out that moment. Relive the moment, then step outside of it and view it as an outsider. This is the difference from emotional brain to logic brain thinking. This is how I deal with my borderline personality disorder to a fucking T. What can be learned from this? Sure, in this case, I should have known better, but why? And I started to evaluate what had happened, think about all of it, roll it around. I realized if I could learn from this and not harden my soul, I would be better off. I would learn from this and there would be new ways I could not be hurt anymore. What I know now, I realized that other part of me, I released that other part of me, but there is something I have noticed after 2 years. My sorrow and sadness have yet to even bring me past and almost tear up. My sorrow and sadness have yet to even bring me past and almost tear up. Meaning you haven't almost cried. Okay, got that. I have not been able to ugly cry since. Good. I had a time where someone else had hurt me the way my ex did. They hurt me after I told them the worst way I have been hurt and did the same thing. And they did it after I opened myself up to them fully. I had nearly broken one of the tenets of my rules of 3 for this person. I needed to cry. I needed the catharsis, but was unable to have that. This has not been the only occasion that this has happened, but the most notable. I have my emotions and I am self-aware. A loss of extreme sorrow seems like it might be an issue, but for now it will do. It's not, because it's making you emotionally aware. You are emotionally maturing. This is a good thing. Not everything needs you to cry. Not everything needs a response from you. We just had this conversation, bro. Like, you being able to process and not having to get to that point is like almost your final form. You're fucking getting there. I hope that this can aid another. I never shy away from sharing my visit to the void. I understand it, even was allowed to write and capitalize on the horror of all of it. I did have the most vivid dreams in this state, learned to better remember my dreams when I woke, which made for interesting writing. Best to you and yours. I fucking love that one. I love that there was no animal dying in it. I don't like that you made me cry or start to cry. I said I wasn't going to do this episode. You fucking got me on that one. There's two. I think when I relate to things, like when I really fucking relate to them, it's hard for me to remove myself from that moment because in the moment I've been there, I remember what that felt like. It's very hard to read somebody else's experience and not be in that moment in time again. Yep. I feel like this was a decent episode. We made it to an hour before I have to go through all the chopping. So, I hope you guys got some value from this. I like that you are doing what you're doing. It sounds to me that you're using your dreams to write books. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I don't know, but that's what it sounded like. And fucking if you are, kudos to you. I said in another episode that a creative outlet goes a long fucking way when you're processing your demons. And that distraction helps. Stop isolating, guys. Stop fucking isolating. If you are this man or you are that man and you are going through that and you don't have anyone, we've created a private Discord chat for the Voice of the Broken. It is exclusive to men so that you can get in there and you can talk to other guys who have gone through this shit and possibly get a little bit of light something new to focus on. Ladies, I know that you've been in the comments for the last 7 weeks talking about how much value you get from these and how it allows you to see the way that your men process things different. I hope that you guys are sitting down and watching these episodes together and having conversations. I hope that he's got the remote in his hand and he can pause and be like, I've been there. This is what I was going through. This is what happens when I have to relive that. These are things that happen in our current relationship that make me go back to that spot. Like, I really fucking hope that this is giving you at least something to talk about, if not fucking new tools to deal with your shit. With that being said, guys, share the content, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of The Voice of the Broken.